Maple Namu. Okay, welcome back, or for the first time, to the Maple Namu Podcast. I'm Chris, and today I want to talk about sort of how hard it is to learn Hanja. Hanja is the sort of Chinese characters that are used in Korean. And this is sort of a story about learning language and how it can go wrong. So, learning a language isn't easy. Everybody knows that. Everybody who's tried knows that. Unless you have an amazing brain, the average person really struggles with it. And as a teacher, I've learned to explain things in very simple ways. And one of the ways to do this is to pretend that you don't know what you're saying and then really look at your word choice. So at one point I had to explain a ship sinking, and I decided to say when you hit a ship and it goes under the water. And those are simple enough words that you can explain it and, you can understand. But if you say like, oh yes, a ship sinking, it's capsizing, and you use bigger words, you just dig yourself into a hole that nobody can understand what you're saying. So you learn how to say things in simple ways and choose words that people know and understand. If you've been listening to this podcast, most of the words are fairly simple. There's not a lot of jargon. Jargon is a word for specialized words that belong to a certain profession or job that are very specific to that. Korean is tricky in this way because often there's a lot of words that sound very similar but are very different. And there's more than one word for the right thing. And if you don't get the exact word that everybody uses, they tend to have a really hard time understanding what you mean. It's a bit easier with younger people, or actually moms, and hardware store owners, but we'll talk about hardware store owners later. It's tricky. It can be just... I think back to the green bag story, the Siregi Bongtu story. It's not easy. English is like this as well. We have I think we have more than 1 million words in English. A lot of them aren't used anymore, but it's just incredibly difficult to try and use all of them. And there's so many different ways to say the same thing. But as a teacher, I always try and choose the easiest way. But in English, you can get close, and usually people will understand. In Korean, I feel like it's a bit harder for that. Enter Hanja. So it's like Hardmode Korean. There are the easier words that people use, and then there are people who go to university to study Hanja, the Chinese characters. It's definitely Hardmode Korean. My Korean has been getting better at this point in the story. This was maybe maybe 5 years of being here. And I've been putting some time into studying. I knew a little bit of Hanja, but not too much. I was taking classes and talking to some of the other teachers at the school, and actually I met my now wife through a language exchange. And when I was talking to the other teacher, just to practice sort of Korean a little bit, she told me that I asked, like, what is your job? And then she said, I teach children, instead of just saying that she was a teacher. And I didn't understand what she said. I kind of feel like she was trying to choose a more complicated way to say something, and I really didn't like her for that. But anyways, it's okay. She's a good person, I think. Another time, this is another Hanja story. My Korean was quite a bit better at this point. I think I was married and living where I am now. I went to a hardware store, and I absolutely love hardware stores, but that will be another podcast. I went to a hardware store, and this lady asked me where my chulshin was, which is the Hanja for I guess, birthplace would be a good way to translate it. And I didn't know. I understood everything except this one word. When you're learning a language, you will often find that you understand all of the words except for the one most important word. So I just sort of looked at her and asked what chulshin was. And then she asked me the same question again in an easier way. Oh, where are you from? And okay, I'm from Canada. And that, Hanja is really hard. Like, why would you ask me where my chulshin is when you could just ask me where I'm from? The way that everybody uses it. But she chose the hard way. And then quickly realized that probably shouldn't. And then we just had a bit of a joke about Hanja being hard. And it was fun. And we went on with our days after a little chat about living in Korea and other things like that. And related to this idea of not asking things in an easy way, I was driving to my in-laws' house in the countryside, and I needed to get gas, even though it's not actually gas, gasoline or petroleum for my car. And I went to a gas station in the countryside that had a fairly good price. And the gas lady asked me a question that in my head I translated to, how did you get here? Now, as you know, context is very important. And I was in the middle of nowhere, countryside, getting gas for my car. So she asked me, how did you get here? And I just looked at her with a big smile, thinking that this is a weird question, and I just said, in my car. Which is a perfectly reasonable answer. How did you get here? Well, in my car. Why are you asking a dumb question? And then she thinks I'm dumb because apparently I talked to my then girlfriend, now wife, later, and she said, well, she was just asking how you got to Korea. Oh, okay. Well, now I'm dumb. So I thought she was dumb for asking a weird question, and she thought I was dumb for not being able to answer her question. But how did you get here? In my car? And then she just stopped talking to me after that. The moral of the story is, pick the easy way to say things when it comes to communication. Be easy. Make it simple. In science, they say kiss. Keep it simple, stupid. And that's sort of become a big part of my life as well. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did or didn't, or have any questions, comments, or concerns, please let me know. I would love to hear from you. And have a great day.